Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? It is a lovely Tuesday afternoon for me. Might be different for you. But today we are talking about world building, which is maybe one of the most important things you can do, specifically as a GM. Maybe turn the music down just a little bit for me. Because, that's that's what you'll be doing the whole time, is keeping in touch with the world, letting it operate around these players. And in case you're new, welcome. This is Dice Anvil, the channel where we talk about TTRPGs, which are tabletop role-playing games, things like D&D, Pathfinder, and a bunch of other games that you've probably heard of, or probably, if you have discovered this channel, you probably already know what they are, and you're probably interested in them. But this channel specifically focuses on the creation of them and the facilitation of them, like if you're running a game or if you're making a game, because that's one thing I have a passion for and something that I poured out a lot of time and energy into, and I'm in the process of refining a TTRPG, so very excited to continue talking about that. Feel free to also engage with the chat. Let me see. Sorry, my OBS, seconds before starting this stream, OBS just decided to completely die on me, and it scared me half to death. But it looks like we're back up and running. If there's any issues, please let me know. Let's go ahead and post a question out for people. Question: what is your favorite? Oh, let me look at this. She is currently. What is your favorite world building detail in media? Let me go ahead and hopefully this time we'll be able to see the screen. Can you see? Okay. Looks like it works this time. Let's go. Okay, we're making improvements. So, yeah, I'm going to pose that question to anybody tuning in, is what is your favorite world building detail that you see in media? Because this is going to influence how we go about creating and thinking about what's the philosophy of world building. What are some mistakes you can make, or what are some success? What's some success you can have? Right away, I'm gonna put Star Wars. I have a lightsaber replica of Luke Skywalker's green lightsaber in the corner there, and it's sick. I only bring it out when there's an intruder in the house, because they're gonna get the thunder at that point. Lord of the Rings, obviously. Just a lot of good stuff in Harry Potter. Hey, Twisted Steel, or Twin Steel. Let's see. Right now we're talking about good world building. And what's your favorite world building detail in media? And we're talking about details here. I love Star Wars and the idea of the world building of the Jedi Order. Kind of a controversial take, because it bugged a lot of people in like the prequels of how, I guess, legal forward it was. Like, it felt sometimes like you were watching a drama about, it's sometimes you were about like running things legally in the galaxy and how that works. But here's the thing, I like how the Jedi Order worked. How it was almost like a corrupt system, and how it had its flaws, and we kind of got to be intimate in how it operated through the trainings, through the way they, interacted with different systems and whatnot. I think that's a really cool detail to have in the world building that George Lucas really got to nail. Lord of the Rings. One of my favorite details of Lord of the Rings is, I almost said the rings themselves, but that doesn't really get fleshed out a lot, right? There's a lot of interesting things about Lord of the Rings, like you can hold it up and be like, this is how you make a soft magic system. I listened to Brandon Sanderson talk about magic systems, and he talked about how, what can Gandalf do? We don't know. We have no idea the extent of his powers or how his magic operates. But here's the thing, though, in a theme that we're going to talk about today and definitely in the future, we're talking about magic systems, is for that, it doesn't really matter because the story elements still come forth and are still entertaining or are still engaging without you having to understand it. Personally, though, I like a hard magic system, one that you can kind of get to understand. Yeah. I don't know, Twin. What's your favorite? Do you prefer a soft or a hard magic system? I'm curious. I know you can say, like, it depends. Did I just say Harry Perry instead of Harry Potter? Harry Perry. That's crazy. A specific detail about Harry Potter, which I love, is obviously I like the Horcruxes in that. I know that it was kind of a last minute thing, and that's kind of a wrong thing you're supposed to do with world building, is come up with something, you know, when you already have everything else developed, when it's so fundamental to the story. Like, I don't know how to spell Horcrux. That's definitely not right. That's right. I think, maybe. We'll see. But the reason it's so interesting to me is because it's so engaging with the story. The objective is clear. It then becomes a gauntlet of trying to find these Horcruxes. Right? Here. Since it's soft, you can't have Gandalf solving all the problems with magic. Sanderson's magic is very rules-based and clear, letting the protagonist solve problems with it. Yeah, and that's a fun thing, though, you know, when you get to have these clear rules and you find out clever ways to figure out. You get to be in the protagonist's head and figure that out. I think that's very D&D-esque. It's very much leaning forward. Like, you can shoot this thing this amount of feet. You can do it this many times. Blah, blah, blah. Does this amount of damage. It's very predictable in the way it operates. But it serves a purpose. It's so you can have those clever moments of, okay, I need to get this many feet close to this thing, or we need to get these two people this many feet close together so my fireball can attack both and whatnot. Yeah, I think it's pretty sick. Yeah, but you're right. Because it's such a soft magic system, Gandalf, he can't go around willy-nilly solving every problem, even though there's no reason to believe he couldn't. You know what I mean? Like, who says Gandalf can't teleport to Mount Doom, right? I mean, he never said he can't, but you gotta assume he can't, so. But anyway, we're not talking about magic systems, like, in particular today. We're talking about world building. And also, there's any other examples you think of, like, that are really good examples of, a really good world building detail. Absolutely drop that in, because we can add that to the list. Okay, so let's talk about the mistakes. I think that it's there's the big golden rule of a mistake when it comes to world building, which we'll get into. World building details. I love the vast interconnection palace of Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. I watched that years and years ago. Interconnected palace. I forget what that one is about. But Prince of Persia, I mean, I don't know how good it was of a movie because I saw it when I was like very young. But from what I understand, it was pretty sick. When I remember, it was pretty sick the way it operated. And we might even bring that back up. Prince of Persia. Oh, the game. Oh, my bad. I was say I don't remember that from the movie at all. But the interconnected palace, though. So that's like a. It sounds to me like it's some kind of obviously a palace that you can go in one room and then maybe come out in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense. I might be completely wrong, but sounds sick. And having like a significant place that like for the characters to interact with, that's like integral to the world, is always a plus. you know, like Hogwarts for Harry Potter or something like that. Okay, so what are some mistakes that can happen during world building? Obviously, the number one mistake you can have is to do it forever, right? Which some people are okay with. Some people, like myself, I'm calling myself out here, would be a-okay if you could thrive on this hobby by just world building endlessly and never starting. You know, I'm a bad procrastinator. So if I'm developing a game, sometimes I'll get caught up in the world building itself and never actually write it, or like never actually finish the game to the point I feel comfortable. So there was a point, it took me like years to actually finish a game. There's a game that I talked about before. I think I talked about it before, but it's called Glory or Ruin. And that world building took me forever because I was just trying to be super detailed, right? Details can be a huge mistake as well. Not always. Tolkien is the prime example of it going right? Like he created a language for world building. No one does that. But he did. And it was awesome. And it worked out so well. But not everyone in a TTRPG. I'm gonna be honest. The hard truth. Here, I'm gonna make a little sub thing here. The hard truth, honestly, is that players don't care. They don't care about the, you know, what the best means of trade, or the best, or the little niche things in the language that people have to get correctly, or they don't care about the obscure name of this random mineral that might come up later. And if you go about explaining it or expecting your players to care, then you might be digging yourself a grave. Unfortunately, I know this from experience. I learned the hard way by asking my players to sit through me explaining a lot of details that just didn't matter, which was a shame. You know, it's a shame for, you know, me and and my players, because I worked hard on these details, and they and I don't blame them for not caring either. You know, it's like, yeah, it's like no one's at fault except for me, because I expected them to care about these trade routes and these different types of economy systems and the political views of this certain demographic, which can be useful, but usually it's not. So, how do we do it right? I'm kind of zooming through this just because I want to get to more discussion-based things. But I don't know. If you guys think of any other mistakes you can think of, you know, let me know. Let's see. Let's talk about success. Boom, boom, boom. Make it look nice and good. Also, is this big enough? Can you guys read all this? I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, there you go. Okay. One thing that has vastly increased my players' interest in the world is engaging them in world building. Yes, Twin Steel. You stole it from my mouth. I was about to put, like, not my first point, but one of the points was going to be engage or include the players. Utilize the players. That's a good way to say it right there. I love doing that kind of stuff. You can read it. Okay, cool. Sweet. Yes, use the players. That's the best case scenario. And how do you do that? Well, you can ask a player to flesh it out. I remember one time I ran a game, and we were visiting a player's home nation, right? So we interact with somebody, and I asked the player, it's like, hey, what's a common way you say hello? And they came up with some crazy, like, way to say hello. But it was fun. It was a comedic moment, and we stuck with it. It became part of the game, and it was a great time. And they cared about doing that. They cared about upholding that that part of that culture. Which, if I would have told them that, no way they would have cared. There's no way. Absolutely. So if we let them flesh out the world, it's just overall going to be a better experience for the players, and I would even say it'd be better for the GM or DM as well. It makes it easier for you, that's for sure, because you can't possibly prep for all the things they're going to interact with in this world, but they can count someone on the spot. I just spilled coffee on myself. That's awesome. That's really, really good. Golly. That's going to be documented forever. Anyway. Okay, so another success thing is the iceberg method. This is so important. I can't believe I can't spell iceberg. This is such an important thing. Again, I always talk about Brandon Sanderson. But yeah, that's another one that we're going to talk about. Yeah, it's easier, engages the players, and can be more fun for you too. Yeah, absolutely. It'll be so much fun. And we're having a blast talking about, what this world is like just by that interaction. And a TTRPG should be a conversation in the first place, like an interaction between the player and the world, right? But it oftentimes doesn't feel like that when you're kind of waterboarding the players and all this lore and this world building that you have created. So engage them in that. Another way, almost a house rule that I've been playing, that I've been using, is called the, I think it's from the Root TTRPG, which is like a woodland creature based game, and it uses the Power by the Apocalypse mechanic. One of their abilities that they have for like this vagabond-esque, this bard type, this charisma based character is, I think it's called Small World or something like that. Basically, you roll when you're interacting with the NPC that you just don't know, and there's certain circumstances. House rules are the best. You roll when you interact with the NPC, and that roll determines your relationship with them. That is such a good way to do it. Small World. I love that. One, because it just makes the game more interesting. It makes it so, but it also puts some stuff on the player. Like, if I'm a naturally charismatic guy and I roll high, maybe I'm friends with this random NPC. That happened a lot in, we made that an official ability for a couple TTRPGs that me and some other guys have made over the years, and it's always been it's like an essential thing now. But I'll even add it in other games, that don't have it. I'll be like, oh, you're from around here? Go ahead and make a charisma check to see if you know how you know this NPC. And if they roll low, maybe you pissed them off at some point. Such a good mechanic. I highly suggest using that. I highly suggest looking into the Root RPG as well. It's very simple, but it's a lot of fun. Okay, so. But yeah, utilize the players. Make it a small world. Even if your world is gigantic, make it so they can become the experts in certain avenues of this world, because they'll care about it, and it'll pay off. At least from what I've seen. The iceberg method is simple. Reveal. Let's see. Only reveal. I'm trying to think of what the best way to word this. Only reveal a little of the world building. This works best when it comes to writing a book or making a movie or something like that, when you're expected to have everything developed, but even then you don't show everything. But here's the thing about a TTRPG, and what I'm sure often does happen with books. You don't need to have everything made, because this is a role-playing game. Wow. Sorry, I'm trying to type fast. You don't need to have everything made. You can just have the rest of that iceberg. Show them the tip, show them the most important parts, the most influential parts of the world, and everything that comes after, you can just kind of come up with, you know? Like maybe they talk to a random, you know, salesman that sells some niche thing like, I don't know, like different spices or whatever. If you have a world that's, you know, classic, you know, fantasy, it's going to be way different than if it's a fantasy world where, you know, certain minerals are extremely rare because of, you know, it's a post-apocalyptic world kind of scenario. You know, you don't need to present that up front. Who cares about the spice? But they would if they interact with that. You don't need to come up with that beforehand. This, of course, plays into the whole don't do it forever mistake that you can make with RPGs. And I think that that's important. But just because you don't want to come up with everything doesn't mean you can't plan ahead. And in fact, you should. You need to make a skeleton. You need to make some kind of skeleton, a structure. And how do we do that? Well, when you're building a world, you got to start with some kind of idea of why you're doing this, right? With some kind of scenario, some reason it's happening. For, there are games, you know, like if it's a post-apocalyptic game, the big thing that's different is the world has ended. Either via zombie apocalypse, a nuclear fallout, or an ice age, whatever it is. But that's the thing, right? And it would make sense for you to then branch out everything after that. Cause and effect. So, if there is a, you know, a nuke fallout, then we can assume that all that radiation is going to affect the animals, right? So you want to go ahead and have that kind of planned out. Like, go ahead and have, okay, what do these radiation poisoned creatures look like? How will it affect X, Y, and Z? How will this affect the general culture? Right? Consider culture. Culture? Culture, consider technology, and consider nature. You know, how will this affect those top three things? And that's a tall ask, but it doesn't need to be everything. Just a general idea. And let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and walk you through kind of what I was thinking as far as the game that I'm working on right now. So if you were here last stream, Twin Steel, I know you were. Bobcat, I'm pretty sure you were as well. That I talked about how Trichotomist Alpha was developed, and I have a lot of things that I changed about the next version I was working on, to the point that I'm just going to make another RPG. And I changed a lot more. I let myself be open to restarting this process, applying the things that I learned along the way. One of those things were everything in this list about world building and how to do it wrong. And I did it pretty wrong beforehand, to the point when I would try to describe what the RPG was about, and I couldn't even say. Like, I was like, I don't even know. It's just the game. It's just a world. And that is a big red flag. You're good, Twin. Take care. That is a big red flag. So I'll say the goal of world building to have a coherent. Wow. You guys are just learning how illiterate I am. To have a coherent theme and setting that is engaging. I would say that's the overall goal. It's a pretty generic thing to say, but I think it's easier said than done. Because I failed. I made a setting that wasn't coherent theme. In the setting, wasn't that engaging. I have a lot of good friends that were willing to interact in this world, play in the world, play test in it, but it really wasn't engaging enough to warrant calling the world building a success. I had a lot of complex ideologies of societies and whatnot, but honestly, it failed. It fluctuated, and I didn't know what to say was the theme. So, I'm gonna scream this from the rooftops. In fact, I'm gonna go full screen. If you are making a TTRPG, you need to come up with the big idea first. I know that because I did the opposite. I started making a TTRPG and then I tried to cram something in. No, that does not work. It does not work well. What you need to do is come up with the idea. So, let me go ahead and flip over to what I've been working on recently. Okay, because I am working on TTRPG and I said, okay, what is going to be the idea here? What is the reason people should care about this game? You know, is there a reason? Well, we'll see. I certainly hope so. Okay. This is what I've been working on lately. This is the game I'm thinking about calling Discovery. And there are reasons for that. And I've been working on a lot of art lately. I've been working on some of the mechanics, but mostly I've been working on the world building as much as I possibly can. The idea let me flip through this particular picture I want to show you guys. The idea is that there's been an apocalypse, right? The world has ended. We don't know why, and we don't need to know why. That's not important. As a person creating this game, it's not that important to me because it's more important about what's happening now. And now I'm really restraining myself from creating the rest of that iceberg of things that don't matter because I love doing that kind of stuff. The endless pit of world building and lore that truly, truly does not matter in this game. But yeah, so far we're holding strong. The idea is this is a version of a planet that humans have since interacted with and have populated. There has been a catastrophic event that has killed most everyone on the planet. This game takes place a couple hundred years after that. All the technology and information was lost. And they discovered the reason, well, we don't know the reason why they came, but we can assume it's because they were studying something called the soul current, which is basically the afterlife that has become an energy system in the planet. That is the driving force of everything, which is this soul current, these wisps of blue that whistle through the air. And people can interact with it in different ways by harnessing it into technology or manipulating it through what can be considered magic. And that's it. That's everything you need to know about most of the world building. And that's a hard thing to chip away at this grand idea you have. And I had to cut so many things. I used to have nations all figured out. I cut all that. I used to have all these different types of classes and races. I cut them. And I only kept 4 species you can be. Because you gotta trim the fat. You gotta trim the fat at the beginning, especially. So I start off with that very simple idea of the soul current. That's the thing. Okay, so let me go ahead and make a little note here. So we'll call this the driving force of the world. What's the thing? For Star Wars, it's the Force. For Harry Potter, it's the School of Magic. It's the thing that's driving the story and the world forward. that's going to in some way influence the rest of the world. So, for Discovery working title, it is the Soul Current. So, now we have to ask the same question that I pointed out before. How's it going to affect culture? How's it going to affect technology? How's it going to affect nature? All right, well, let's work does that. So, I've already kind of had an idea of how these work. Let's start with technology. We'll say the driving force of the world is a soul current and apocalypse. Well, not apocalypse. Catastrophe. Dang it. So, how does this affect technology? Well, technology was set back, but in this game, you can assume that since humans, traveled to this other planet, that technology has advanced greatly. But it is lost because of that catastrophe. So, technology is a mystery, in a way. Because of that catastrophe and because of the soul current, which the players won't fully understand, it's kind of going to be a confusing thing for them to interact with. This means that there'll be crashed ships throughout the whole world that will, in their own way, be a sort of dungeon for them to interact with. And they'll discover this strange technology that they interact with. It can seemingly be like magic. And in fact, I want there to be a soft magic system approach to technology. Just to be like there's a gun that can gather heat sources and expel them, basically turning into a flamethrower or some kind of blaster or whatever. I'm just making something up. Though the players don't need to know how that works. And in fact, they are expected to not fully understand how that works. But it just does. And it doesn't. The beauty of that is it was invented a long time ago with technology so advanced that they don't have anymore. So there's going to be a mystery associated with that, which I think is fun. Mystery and discovery. That's how let me see. Yeah, it's mystery. It needs to be discovered throughout time. So, yeah, that's kind of how technology is being affected through this driving force. All right, let's talk about nature. Okay, so one thing about the soul current is because it is literally souls manifest into this energy, you can, it is life-giving. So, sometimes, literally, I'll get into that when we talk about culture, but it rejuvenated the world at an accelerated rate, which means that it is a flourished world. You can expect, even despite everything getting wiped out, you're going to see beautiful skies, you're going to see these plains with grassy fields, you're going to see moss covering these metal structures. Everything is flourishing. I don't know why I'm choosing. Nice. Flourishing. Gosh. I'm never typing for you guys again. Everything is flourishing because of the soul current. Notice how I'm going back to that same theme. Technology is mysterious and it's gonna point. I'm gonna make that up verb. Technology is mysterious because of the catastrophe and because of the soul current. Nature is flourishing because of the soul current and, in a way, also the catastrophe. Because, guess what? If you kill most everyone on a planet, the soul current is going to dramatically increase. And because of that, it just, tenfolded increased that flourishment of nature. Let's talk about culture. Culture is one that can be a little tricky for people. But how does the soul current affect that? What if the technology is now precious? Especially stuff that's discovered and people are able to hack into things that are useful now. Like, I'm sure a lot of things people find and they don't have a use for it, or they can't discover a use for it. But once it clicks and they realize, oh man, this thing is a weapon, or oh man, this thing is used for transportation, it's going to become extremely valuable. What else is going to be precious? Well, the soul current will be at the forefront of attention for a lot of religious-esque groups or people that want to harness that, I'm sure. Especially since you can discover through the rest of the, the world that, and through technology, that it was obviously useful for something. So there's going to be a lot of time and dedication, a lot of study devoted to what the soul current is. So, study of soul current. There's going to be a lot of scavengers, which are maybe one, making money by digging through these crash ships or these bases that were destroyed and finding things useful that they can sell because technology is precious. Or maybe they're scavengers because it's the only way they know how to survive. I think that culturally, people groups are still underdeveloped, or they're in the early stages of development. They're underdeveloped. And because of that, people might be desperate, thus becoming scavengers, right? Also, a part of nature I want to point out is that this is basically a wound-up clock of a sci-fi world that after the catastrophe was crushed and parts of it were scattered around this world. Part of that would obviously be androids and robots, right? So naturally, there's going to be robots just around. Some of them operate off of the soul current energy. And one cool thing about soul current energy is that it gives life. So, it gives consciousness in a way. So there are species in here, which I'm going to talk about right now, that I've developed and we'll get into in future videos, but the species that, according to the world building, which makes sense, would be humans, robots, which I'm going to call something cooler. I think Mechorian. The reason I don't like this because it sounds a lot like a Metachlorian, and I hate Metachlorians from Star Wars. And I don't want to be filled with rage every time I go to play my own game. Verdant is another species that I'm very happy about. What is a verdant? Well, like I said before, the soul current provides life and consciousness to things. Guess what there's a lot of right now? There's a lot of plants covering this planet. And it has a body. It can develop that consciousness and become basically a version of humans, but with plant-based material. Let me go ahead and show you another piece of art real quick. Like, this is a verdant right here. He's a professor. Very intelligent, very intertwined with culture, and he is a tree person, which is just so much fun. So much fun. And I was willing to take these leaps of creativity and this world building because if you start off with that big idea, it opens you up to be able to come up with these bizarre ideas. I would have never decided to make a species like that without that idea. Without that, not barrier, but that avenue to go with it in a way that feels natural. Here's another guy right here. I'll show you him. A lot of them have like these leaves in their hair, basically, and green skin. But some of them are also oak blood or root born, and they had that wood-like skin, which, you know, it's kind of cool. I think it'll be good for. There'll be different things that they'll excel in, and it's just a cool, I think, sort of unique species. More about them later, and then you can be, of course, android as well, or a human. There's another one that I'm thinking about putting in that I might talk about in a future date, which is still kind of up in the air, but we'll see. Okay, so as far as world building goes, we got this. We got our skeleton. This is our skeleton right here. Let me make this nice and big. World building skeleton. So much fun. I can make this, yeah. Let me go ahead and make these into little points here so it's nice and fancy. Okay, great. I'm gonna make this its own little thing. Just clean it up a little bit so it's concise. Okay, so this is so far our world building skeleton, where we have room to grow out from here when appropriate. We're gonna grow out from here when we're making like abilities or attributes about these different species, when we're coming up with locations and things, or we're coming up with adventures for our players to embark on, and they'll all be going back to the central theme of this, or one of the core branches of this world building. This is a technique that I think would work. It's one that I've seen in the past, and I'm excited to go through this process, you know, with this structure in mind. There's going to be a whole lot of fun things you can discover. Again, I'm thinking about calling the game Discovery after all. So Discovery will be at the forefront of the mind of the GM and the players as they go. Reward players from doing that, and it will give the GM the tools to have things out there. Fun little doohickeys and doodads for them to use. Ah, good stuff. Okay, well, a bit of a shorter stream today, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you like and subscribe, and check out my other videos. I go live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And yeah, I'm going to continue talking about this game and the process of me developing it, and how we can discuss, you know, how to make your own game, or talk about the wonderful success stories of games prior, or just fantasy and sci-fi in general. But overall, had a good time today. If you had fun as well, make sure you like and subscribe. Check out the Discord, and I will see you later, my friends. You have a good one.